Hi, welcome back to Tiny Garage Fabrication. We're back to work on the C10 shop truck. Last episode I got everything in the engine bay, the firewall, the frame rails, and all that stuff painted. And today we're going to start putting it all back together. Got all the parts down there. The main crossmember, upper and lower control arms. I've got springs, shocks, shock relocators, spindles, new wheel bearings, inner and outer tie rods, plus adjusting sleeves, brake lines, ball joints, the whole 9 yards. Everything that goes into rebuilding the front of one of these is pretty much there on the floor. I still need to clean up and rebuild the brake calipers. That's just about the only thing that's not pictured there. So let's get into it. First things first, let's get the main cross member attached to the frame rail. Once I hoist this thing up, I go ahead and get started with the bolts on the upright sections for the upper control arms. And once I get those uprights done, then I'll stick in the 3 bolts on each side that connect it to the lower section of the frame rail. Now in order to access the bottom sides of these, you have to reach in through the spring pocket. So the whole suspension, as you can see, needs to be taken apart in order to remove or install this main cross member. Cross member installed, we'll get to the upper control arms. Now during my rebuild on these, as you can see, the only thing I did was take out the ball joints, which I did in the last video by grinding off the rivets and punching them out, and we'll install the new upper ball joints here in just a moment. I didn't do the control arm bushings or anything. These were in really good shape. As you can see, the control arm is holding itself up. It's not just flapping about. I do think in the future I'm going to swap to tubular upper and lower control arms, some aftermarket ones by Global West or CPP or somebody. So I really didn't feel like rebuilding these. The lower control arms are next to go in. The design on these C10 trucks is pretty clever. There's just a really thick main shaft that has the bushings and everything. And then there are these 2 U-bolts you can see on the floor right there. And those 2 U-bolts are the only thing that hold the lower control arms in. They're located with a little divot in the shaft and a pin in the saddle. Super easy to get in place, super secure. I really like this design. Now here we are installing that upper ball joint, thread in the Zerk fitting, and then new hardware which comes with the ball joints. And just go ahead and run those bolts up from the top. That way the excess length, if I ran them down the other way, wouldn't affect the ball joint rubber boot. Now with the upper and lower control arms installed, I'm going to put this spring in. This is a 3-inch drop spring from Brothers Truck, something I had left over from my 69 Suburban project. On that truck, the 3-inch drop springs with a 2-inch drop spindle was just too low for the size of tires I had, so I have these left over from when I moved those back to a 2-inch drop spring. And as you can see, these springs just kind of go up in there. I don't need a spring compressor because they are so short that I can just go ahead and stick it in and then put the spindle in onto the upper and lower ball joint studs, and go ahead and put the nuts on, and this thing's sitting pretty. Now with the suspension mostly put back together, we'll move on to the front calipers. Now I want to break these down so that I can do the rebuild kits, which is new seals and O-rings, as well as new hoses and crush washers for the banjo bolt. Now this block of wood protects the piston from slamming into the outside of the caliper, as well as, bouncing around the place. It's more of a safety measure than anything else. It's definitely a best practice. Now, I wasn't able to get much pressure through these old hoses. They must have been collapsed, so I temporarily put my new hose on in order to get some airflow through there. Now you see, eventually I'll go back with these weird pliers and I'll kind of push the thing back in. And what that's doing is basically allowing me to get a running start, if you will. Kind of helps with stuck pistons to move them in and out and in and out until eventually, like that, they pop free. Now you can see all the goo and schmutz that was in there. That's a good reason why this thing was sticking. Now we'll fish out the seal as well as the square cut O-ring. Take everything else off. Now on the other one, remove the line, the seal, and the O-ring. And these are ready to get cleaned up and painted. Now moving on to the wheel bearings. I got a fresh disc. Now the disc is the wheel bearing carrier on these C10s. Sometimes there'll be one piece, sometimes there'll be multiple pieces, sometimes the disc will slide over a hub and the wheel bearings will be in the hub. This application, the wheel bearings are in the disc. So use a good amount of wheel bearing grease to pack the bearings. Do that by putting the grease in your hand and then just kind of jamming the wheel bearing into the grease, forcing the grease in between all of the rollers. And go ahead and slide it in and use some more grease. You can almost never use too much grease on wheel bearings. Now I am missing some parts. I'm missing the big washer that goes behind there, as well as the grease cap. I need to order those. Now for rebuilding the calipers, get some brake fluid to use as a lubricant, slide in the O-ring, and then slide in the piston, and then work on getting that seal in there. Now I use a little pick tool to kind of get the seal stretched around the lip of the piston. It's kind of difficult, and when using a pick tool like this, you want to make sure not to accidentally poke through the seal. Alright, now since I've got the drop coils in here, this shock is essentially too long. So this is a shock relocation kit from Brothers Truck, and it's supposed to go here. I'm supposed to drill some holes in the frame. I really wish it would have lined up with at least one of the holes already in the frame, but that would be too much to ask. So I have to drill my own, and as you can see, clearance to the firewall is pretty slim over here. Alright, so this came with its own hardware, and it says to place it directly above the shock. Now, to me it looks like this is pretty directly above. Try to fit a clamp in here. Now that I've got the bracket where it looks like it needs to be, I'll grab a small pick tool and scratch some lines through the bolt holes that let me know where I need to drill the actual holes in the frame. Kind of hard to see, but yeah, okay, so there's a hole right here already in the frame, but that's where I need to be. There's a hole right here in the frame, but that's where I need to be. Like, for real, is it that hard to just make a bracket that could go here and one extra hole? I don't know. I mean, apparently it is that hard. I'm gonna try one of these here right angle drill attachments just to give me enough room to get in there, and looks like I might not have enough room, judging by the length of the bits that I have, but we'll see. We'll see how it works out. So I'm going to be using from Harbor Freight the Hercules starter point spiral flute step bits. I do particularly like this one because it's skinny and it's got deeper shanks. A lot of times with these step bits I have a problem. I'll be drilling something that's even kind of thick and it won't go all the way through before it starts to bore out the next size. So this is kind of neat. But again, like I said, it's kind of long. I think getting into this hole is going to be, it's going to be close. It's going to be real close. I might be able to get in with one of these shorter ones to get it started. But let's see, we'll find out. See if I can get you in close here. Show you kind of what I was talking about. Pretty hard to see. Ouch, that's hot. But it just started to do the top right here, and there's still a little bit of lip from the previous size on the bottom. So that's why I was hoping to use this one, which the much longer shanks should be able to go into there and knock those out. Let's see. And that one is 3/8, and 3/8 is all the way through. I might have to hit the next one just because you can kind of see my scribe line. It's a little bit off. But with any luck, they'll all be a little bit off and the bracket will still go on just fine. And the bracket's got a little bit of a bow in it. It's due to how much heat was put in it when this thing was welded. What I mean, I had it in the same damn thing. I'm not going to criticize them on that. I'll get this all tightened up here a little bit later. Bonus nachos on this setup is that I should be able to let this jack down. Nope. That didn't work out quite as good as I thought. Oh shit, it did. I thought I could let it down and not have the spring fall out of this little perch. It did, but we'll take care of that when we set everything down. Yeah, I like it. You know, something's bugging me about this. We got this thing, yellow chromate. That's cool. The upper shock bolt and the lock washer, also yellow chromate. But its nut is not. And all the mounting hardware is not. Let's go do something about this. Alright, well, I clearly have a bit of a mess here, but I'll go ahead and do this thing anyway. Start with just one of the zinc bolts. About 10 seconds. Quick little dip. Now normally you would hit this with a heat gun and kind of set that chromate for about, you know, a few seconds. Unfortunately, my heat gun has managed to not be here right now, so it's just a slight change. I could try hold it in there a little bit longer. Alright, this one's in a little bit longer. You can see it's definitely a bit more gold. That's it. And these may turn out a little bit kind of chalky or weird looking because I didn't use a heat gun, and then generally you hang them to dry them. You can see where they touch the towel, they're already kind of coming off. But as long as the heads look good, then I'll be fine with it. And there was nothing wrong with the bolts before. I just wanted them gold. That does it for this episode. Got a whole lot of stuff done. Got the front end all assembled. It's all in place. You just, little odds and ends to tighten up. I have to torque the upper and lower ball joints. I have to torque the brake calipers. I have to get my washers for the spindles as well as the grease caps. Just a little amount of stuff to do, just loose ends. Getting those shock mounts drilled was key to getting this whole thing done. Next episode, we're going to get the motor and we're going to mock it up. I don't have my headers yet. Those should come in a couple of days. Those aren't necessary for the mock-up. The main thing I need to do is make sure that the transmission that I'm going to put in is going to A, fit the floor, because it'll be a big problem if it doesn't, and second, I need to make sure that I have a good crossmember for it. So I might have to fabricate a crossmember extension or another rear mount or something like that. So that's the whole reason why I'm going to go ahead and test fit it. And it's going to have to come back out because I don't even have a flywheel or a clutch yet. Leave a comment, smash the like button, subscribe if you want to see where this build ends up. There's a lot more to go. Thanks for watching. See you next video.